Chapter 1, Chapter 1, Henry Winchester. The living room looked like Hygiene had packed a suitcase and quietly moved out. Beer bottles lay scattered across the floor, some upright, most defeated. A pizza box sagged open on the coffee table, its contents long devoured, leaving behind a glossy map of Greece as evidence. The television droned onto an empty audience, canned laughter echoing faintly while thin strips of morning light slipped through the half-open blinds and illuminated the mess without mercy. It wasn't just untidy. It was committed to the aesthetic. On the couch, the architect of the disaster slept through it all. He lay sprawled on his back, one arm dangling over the side, snoring softly. Brown hair stuck out in uneven angles, evidence of a restless night. His face was decent above average, the kind that cleaned up well with minimal effort. The only thing ruining the picture was his shirt, unbuttoned just enough to reveal a slight curve of belly that spoke of convenience meals and a comfortable lack of urgency. Outside, the day had started, and the sunlight fell straight across his face. He groaned. One hand shifted weakly, but it wasn't enough. He cracked one eye open. Blue. Good morning, he muttered, stretching his arms overhead with a lazy yawn. Then he froze. He stared at the ceiling. That isn't my room ceiling. The words came out slow, confused. He blinked, blue eyes narrowing as he tried to make sense of it. Once. Twice. He sat up. The room came into full view. The mess. The bottles. The sitcom. The smell, stale beer and something faintly burned. What the hell, he shouted, scrambling to his feet. Whose house is this? He turned in a slow circle, disbelief growing by the second. He did not live like this. Sure, he was lazy but selectively lazy. The important things mattered. Objects had their places. If something was 1 inch out of alignment, it bothered him. He couldn't sleep knowing a chair wasn't pushed in properly. And garbage? Garbage went outside. Always. So why was he standing in what looked like the aftermath of a week-long bender? He glanced down and stiffened. The belly. Small, but undeniable. No, he muttered. He tugged at the hem of the shirt, lifting it slightly, as if that would somehow make the problem disappear. It didn't. There is no way, he said flatly. I did not have this yesterday. One night. One single night. That's all it would have taken for this upgrade? Except he hadn't asked for this kind of upgrade. Who wants belly fat? It was ugly. His arms felt off too. His shoulders heavier. His balance just a little wrong. A prickling unease crawled up his spine. Slowly, he scanned the room again and then saw it. A mirror, mounted on the far wall. His breath caught. He approached it cautiously, each step measured, like the reflection might lunge at him if he moved too fast. He stopped just short of the glass and stared. The man staring back was not him. Same general height. Same brown hair, though a bit messy than usual. Blue eyes, staring back at him with the same confusion and rising panic. But the face? Wrong. He raised a hand. The reflection did the same. He touched his cheek. Solid. Real. Who the fuck did a plastic surgery on my face? He shouted at the mirror. His voice was deeper than it should have been. Rough around the edges, like it had spent too many nights yelling over loud music or arguing with bartenders. This isn't my face, he snapped. This isn't my body. And I know for a fact I don't wake up in pigsties. Asterisk. After 30 minutes, he had gone through the usual states any human did when faced with something completely absurd like waking up to find their body changed overnight. First came denial. He convinced himself it was just a dream, a strangely detailed one, but a dream nonetheless. He pinched his arm, swore when it hurt, then lay back on the couch and shut his eyes, waiting for the world to reset. It didn't. The ceiling stayed the same. The couch stayed uncomfortable. When that excuse failed, despair followed. He sat on the floor with his back against the couch, hands tangled in his hair, staring at nothing. He checked the mirror again, as if it might finally blink and turn him back. Finally, there was acceptance. Slow, unwilling, and bitter but real. He exhaled and looked around the room. "All right," he said quietly. "Shitty things happen." He didn't sound angry. Just tired. He'd read enough novels and more than a few fanfictions to recognize the pattern. Souls crossing worlds. Waking up in bodies that weren't theirs. Transmigration. Reincarnation. Different names for the same cruel joke. He met his reflection's eyes again. "So this is one of those," he murmured. The thought settled in his chest, heavy and inescapable. Whatever had happened, it wasn't temporary. It wasn't a dream. It was real. "So," he said, looking up at the ceiling, voice flat, "if you're listening, whoever did this, I'll take my cheat now." He waited. "Nothing. I know the rules," he continued, rubbing his temples. "You don't send people back." "Fine. I've accepted that part." He gestured vaguely around the room. "But you at least give something. A system. A treasure. Powers. Anything." Silence. "I don't care what it is," he added, irritation creeping in. "Just make it useful." He let out a breath and muttered, "You already made me lose $10,000. I was saving that to fix my room and buy a gaming setup." Still no response. The room remained stubbornly quiet, offering him absolutely nothing in return. He slowly knelt on the ground, the weight of it all finally pressing down on him. "I'm screwed," he muttered. New world. New body. No skills, no job, no money. From what he could tell, this version of him was a professional couch ornament with zero survival value. After a minute of silent self-pity, he forced himself to stop. If this was really happening, the least he could do was figure out who he was now. Not that his previous life was worth clinging to anyway. A father rotting in jail from drug abuse. A gold-digger mother who vanished the moment things went south. Yes, shitty pretty much covered it. He checked his pockets, patting himself down for a wallet or an ID. Nothing. Great. He glanced around the living room again. The mess made his eye twitch. Finding anything useful in this dump was going to be a nightmare. Then he noticed the photo frame on the wall. He walked over and picked it up. The first photo showed him this body as a kid, standing stiffly between a man and a woman. Mother and father, probably. Normal. Almost uncomfortable in how normal it looked. The second photo made him pause. The same man, his father, stood beside another man around the same age. They were close. Brothers, maybe. He stared at the second man's face longer than necessary. "I've seen you before," he murmured. The familiarity nagged at him. He lowered the frame and resumed searching, growing more annoyed by the second. Couch. Drawers. Nothing. On a whim, he opened the fridge. And there it was. A wallet, sitting casually beside a row of beer bottles. Of course. He grabbed it and flipped it open. Henry Winchester. Winchester. His stomach dropped. The name echoed in his head as he slowly turned back toward the photo frame. His eyes locked onto the second man's face again. The realization hit like a punch. "Fuck," he whispered. "That's John Winchester." Now it made sense. Too much sense. His heart started racing. John Winchester wasn't just some guy, he was a character. A major one. From a show he knew very well. He staggered back a step. Holy fuck, this is the supernatural world. Angels. Demons. Monsters. Ghosts. Apocalypses lined up like appointments. A world constantly on the edge of extinction. And of all people, he was a Winchester. That thought alone was enough to make his chest tighten. Year, he said sharply. What year is this? He searched the room again, this time more carefully, until he spotted a phone on the table. He picked it up, hands tense, and unlocked it. 2006, late 2006. His blood went cold. Fuck, he whispered. I'm in season 2. Asterisk. Author's note, chapters will be updated weekly, around 2 to 3 times a week. Each chapter will be between 1.3k and 1.6k words. In the future, I may start a Patreon for advanced chapters, so please don't ask for extra updates beyond the schedule. And no, I'm not planning to drop this novel midway. This story won't focus only on supernatural, I'll also be including elements from other horror movies and universes for fun. See you in the next chapter. I hope you enjoy the journey. Chapter 2, Most Troublesome Duo. Fuck it. I should just run, Henry thought. Japan. Korea. Australia. Anywhere that isn't the United States. Staying here was practically volunteering to be collateral damage. He knew exactly what this country had lined up: apocalypses, demon wars, angels falling from heaven, ancient seals breaking like cheap locks. Every few months, something catastrophic tried to end existence, and somehow it always centered around the States. And he didn't even have a system. No powers. No combat skills. No hunter training. Just the name Winchester attached to him like a curse. That name alone could attract attention from demons looking for leverage, from angels looking for prophecy, from anything that enjoyed ruining lives. Why stay in the epicenter of supernatural disasters when he could be on another continent pretending ghosts were just folklore? The thought had barely settled in his mind when... Bang! 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 A loud knock slammed against the door. Henry flinched. Who the hell now, he muttered. He stayed still, hoping whoever it was would leave. The knocking didn't stop. It got harder. More impatient. Annoyance pushed past fear. With a curse under his breath, Henry strode to the door and yanked it open. Big mistake. Something slammed into him immediately. Henry barely registered the face before he was knocked backward, crashing onto the floor as the man climbed on top of him. He tried to shove him off, but the guy was stronger, too strong. Shit! Henry grunted, struggling. The attacker grabbed both his arms, pinning them down, then leaned close. Blood smeared his lips, dripping down his chin, his eyes wild and unfocused as he opened his mouth like he was about to. What the hell, get off me, I'm not gay! Henry shouted. Pure instinct took over. He drove his knee up hard. Right into the groin. The man let out a choked gasp and loosened his grip just enough. Henry didn't waste the moment. He shoved him off violently and rolled to his feet. He grabbed an empty beer bottle and pointed it like a weapon. Stay back, he snapped, breath uneven. You crazy piece of shit. 30 minutes. 30 minutes in this world, and this was already happening. The man straightened slowly. Then he smiled. Blood dripped from his mouth as he lunged again. He didn't hesitate. He smashed the bottle straight into the man's head. Glass exploded. The man staggered but didn't fall. What the? His eyes darted around desperately. His gaze landed on a baseball bat leaning near the wall. He bent down to grab it. Too slow. Arms wrapped around him from behind, crushing his ribs. The attacker snarled in his ear. Henry slammed his head backward, feeling it connect with a nose. The grip loosened just enough. Then he grabbed the bat. He swung it straight at the attacker's head. Crack! The man's head snapped to the side, but he was still standing. No, Henry breathed. No, no, no. The thing shook its head slowly, bones popping, and lunged again. Henry tightened his grip, feet planting instinctively. He swung like he was hitting a baseball. The bat connected with a sickening crack. The man's neck twisted sharply far past what it should have and his body collapsed to the floor in a heap. Silence. He staggered back, chest heaving, hands shaking so badly he almost dropped the bat. Who? He dragged in deep, uneven breaths, staring at the unmoving body on the floor. Yet, he whispered hoarsely. Definitely supernatural. Then a translucent red screen shimmered into existence in front of him, the light reflecting faintly off the broken glass and blood-stained floor. Congratulations! Demon infectee eliminated. Condition fulfilled, supernatural system unlocked. Reward granted, 1 supernatural point. Henry stared at the floating interface, chest still rising unevenly from the fight. For a moment he didn't move, didn't blink. Then his brain caught up. You're joking. Another notification replaced the first. Lucky wheel activated. Epic lottery triggered 0.1% chance. The red interface expanded, forming a spinning wheel filled with countless icons. Abilities flashed past: vampire traits, werewolf regeneration, spirit manipulation, wraith phasing, hunter combat skills. The sheer variety made his pulse quicken despite himself. So he wasn't completely helpless after all. All right, he muttered, more focused now. Let's see what kind of mercy this universe has. He pressed the glowing spin button. The wheel began rotating rapidly, icons blurring into streaks of red and black. It slowed gradually, ticking past abilities that would have made survival much easier. Enhanced healing. Demon immunity. Angel blade proficiency. It passed them all. Then it stopped. On a blood-soaked t-shirt. Henry's expression flattened. Item acquired, failure is death. Description: a cursed shirt once worn by a fitness fanatic who pushed his body beyond its limits. Even in death, his obsession remained embedded within the fabric. Wearing this item grants the physique and strength of a trained athlete. Once per day, the wearer may activate superhuman strength for 10 minutes. Curse effect: residual compulsion urges the wearer toward excessive physical exertion. System protection applied: as the system bearer, the curse will not affect you. The shirt materialized midair and dropped to the floor at his feet. It carried a faint metallic scent of dried blood mixed with sweat, like an abandoned gym locker. Henry looked down at it carefully, as if expecting it to lunge. Then he looked back at the screen. I have a system. Henry wasn't even looking at the shirt anymore. The fact that it had appeared out of thin air was proof enough. That meant the screen was real. The rewards were real. Which meant whatever rules this world operated on he had just been added to them. How does this even work? He muttered, eyes flicking over the fading red interface. Points. Items. A wheel. No tutorial. Of course there was no tutorial. Before he could focus or try to interact with it again. A gunshot cracked through the air outside. Sharp. Close. Henry flinched instinctively, body tensing. Another bang echoed down the street, followed by shouting. Fuck, he breathed, moving toward the window cautiously. Did I land in a war zone? Then his gaze dropped to the bloodied t-shirt lying on the floor. It looked disgusting. It smelled worse. But he had just been tackled by something that didn't go down after a bottle to the skull. He didn't have the luxury of standards. Fine, he muttered, picking it up between 2 fingers. We're doing this. It felt heavier than normal fabric. Warmer, almost. He grimaced at the smell. If I die wearing this, I'm haunting whoever designed it. Henry exhaled and pulled the blood-soaked shirt over his head. The moment the fabric settled against his skin, it tightened and then vanished. Not torn, not burned. It simply sank into him as if absorbed, leaving nothing behind. He looked down sharply. The slight belly he'd been cursing minutes ago was gone. His torso tightened visibly, muscle forming beneath his skin as if it had always been there. He lifted his shirt slowly and stared. Defined abs clean. Sharp. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered, flexing his arm and watching new muscle shift smoothly under the skin. I only ever saw this kind of build on TV. The warmth inside him felt steady, controlled. Not overwhelming. Just, stronger. Another gunshot echoed outside. Henry moved to the window and pulled the blinds aside carefully. 2 cars burned near the corner, flames casting harsh orange light across the street. Smoke rolled through the air, but there were no bystanders, no sirens, just tension hanging heavy over the neighborhood. It seems something strange is happening outside, he murmured, though that might have been the understatement of the century. On the front porch, Boots stepped onto wood. A familiar voice, low and edged with impatience, spoke through the door. Sam, you sure this is the house? Dean Winchester stood with a shotgun in hand, posture tight and ready. He scanned the windows with sharp, practiced caution. Sam stood beside him, handgun steady, eyes focused. Yet. This is it. I saw Dad's photo inside. And someone with the name Winchester. He's connected, Dean. I know he is. Dean exhaled through his nose. Great. Because our family's not complicated enough. Henry stepped back from the window, decision made. Running sounded a lot smarter than dying. He grabbed an old duffel bag from the corner and started shoving clothes into it without folding anything. Essentials only. Cash, phone, whatever didn't scream I live here. He was halfway through stuffing in a pair of jeans when the front door creaked open. 2 figures stepped inside. Dean entered first, weapon up, stand steady. Sam followed behind him, eyes sharp and assessing. Henry stared at the 2 most problematic men in the entire supernatural universe. And slowly raised his hands. Dean's shotgun immediately trained on his chest. Easy, Dean warned. Don't move. Henry's mind went blank. Yet, he thought numbly. I'm fucked. Chapter 3, Welcome to the family. I don't have anything valuable in the house, Henry said carefully, keeping his hands raised. As you can see, it's a dump. He really didn't want to get dragged into whatever mess the Winchesters were chasing. Getting transmigrated was bad enough. Becoming collateral damage in a Winchester hunt ranked significantly worse. Dean didn't lower the shotgun. He studied Henry's face longer than necessary, his expression tightening slightly. There was something there, something familiar in the jawline, the eyes, the shape of his brow. Not identical. But close enough to itch. Dean's gaze hardened. Sam, meanwhile, moved sideways, eyes scanning the room. They landed on the photo frame mounted on the wall. He stepped closer to it. Dean, Sam said, tone shifting. You might want to see this. Dean didn't take his eyes off Henry. Don't move, he warned, voice low and edged. Henry nodded quickly. Wasn't planning to. Dean backed up a step, keeping the shotgun trained on Henry while angling himself toward the wall. The first picture showed a younger Henry standing between a man and a woman. The second showed that same man standing beside someone Dean knew all too well. That's Dad, he said flatly. Sam nodded slowly. Yet. Dean looked up at Henry again, this time with something sharper in his eyes. Start talking, Dean said. How do you know John Winchester? Henry's brain short-circuited. How the hell should I know? He screamed internally. I woke up here an hour ago. I don't even know where the damn light switches are. His palms were still raised, but his mind was racing. He couldn't tell them the truth. Hi, I'm a transmigrated soul who just looted a cursed gym shirt. That would get him shot faster than any demon. And then. Something stirred. Not his memory. This body's. It wasn't a flood. It was fragments. Familiar names reacting to familiar faces. Like old files reopening when accessed. John. Uncle John. Family tension. Arguments. Distance. The pieces weren't clear, but they were enough. Henry swallowed. He's my dad's brother, he said carefully. Dean's expression didn't soften. Your dad's brother, he repeated, voice flat. You're telling me John Winchester had a brother we've never heard about? Henry kept his breathing steady. I'm telling you what I know. Sam stepped slightly to the side, studying him with that analytical look. What's your dad's name? Another flicker. The answer came slower this time, like pulling something from fog. Michael, Henry said, hoping the hesitation didn't give him away. Michael Winchester. Dean's eyes narrowed. And where's Uncle Michael now? He asked. Henry hesitated. That hesitation wasn't fake this time. Because whatever memories were surfacing, they didn't feel good. Dead, Henry said quietly. The word landed heavier than he expected. Dean and Sam exchanged a glance. Something unspoken passed between them. Dean lowered the shotgun just an inch, not safe, not friendly. Just, less immediate. Okay, Dean said slowly, eyes still locked on Henry. Then here's a better question. His gaze shifted briefly toward the body lying twisted on the floor before returning to Henry. Did you do that? Yeah. He attacked me. I tried talking first. That didn't work. So, self-defense. Dean studied him for a long second, then glanced at Sam. The two stepped a few feet aside, their voices dropping but not quiet enough that Henry couldn't catch parts of it. Dean, the photos match, Sam murmured. That's Dad. And that picture's old. This guy didn't fake that overnight. Dean kept his jaw tight. Or it's a setup. Some demon cooks up a fake cousin to get close, mess with our heads, drop our guard. Sam didn't dismiss it. Maybe. But demons usually go bigger than this. And he looks human. No sulfur. No weird vibes. Dean glanced back at Henry again. The resemblance was subtle, but it was there. Around the eyes. The stubborn set of the jaw. Dad never mentioned he had a brother, Dean muttered. You think Dad wanted to drag the rest of his family into this life? Sam asked quietly. After what happened to Mom? To us. Dean didn't answer immediately. That hit closer than he liked. Yeah, he said finally, voice rougher. Sounds like him. They turned back toward Henry. Dean lowered the shotgun slightly but didn't relax. All right. What's your name? Henry. Henry Winchester. When's the last time you saw John? Sam asked. Henry hesitated, searching the fragments of memory that weren't truly his. When I was a kid. That's the last time my dad saw him too. After that, nothing. Sam glanced at Dean. Timeline works. Dean exhaled slowly. Let's be sure. He stepped forward, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a small vial of holy water. Without warning, he splashed it across Henry's face. Henry flinched. What the hell? The water ran down his skin. No smoke. No burn. Dean watched carefully for any sign of reaction. There was none. All right, Dean said, tucking the vial away. You're not a demon. Henry wiped his face with the back of his hand, trying not to look as shaken as he felt. So, can I ask why you're throwing all these questions at me? He had to tread carefully. He couldn't say he already knew who they were or why they were here. That would only drag him right back into suspicion, and he had barely cleared the first round. Dean exchanged a brief look with Sam before answering. Because, Dean said evenly, we're the sons of John Winchester. Sam stepped slightly forward, though his posture wasn't hostile anymore. Which makes us your cousins. The word hung there. Dean gave a short nod, his expression still guarded but no longer seconds away from pulling the trigger. So, yet. Welcome to the family. Henry forced something that might pass for a smile. Inside, however, his thoughts were far less polite. Nope. Hard pass. Remove me from the Winchester subscription plan immediately. Chapter 4, Trapped Town. When Dean invited him to come along, Henry's first instinct was to refuse. Staying out of Winchester business felt safer. The less attached he was, the better his odds of not getting dragged into something bigger than he could handle. The gunshots echoed from outside. It wasn't distant. It was close enough to carry the sharp crack of panic with it. A scream followed, ragged and desperate, before cutting off abruptly. Henry's hesitation weakened. He already knew the town's name from this body's memories. River Grove, Oregon. The burning cars outside, the violent outbursts, the chaos spreading through the streets, it all matched. The earlier system notification replayed clearly in his mind, demon infectee eliminated. The man with blood smeared across his mouth who tried to force himself onto him wasn't just insane. He had been trying to infect him. Croton didn't spread through the air, it spread through blood and contact. The aggression. The erratic behavior. The desperate need to get close. He was in the middle of the Croton outbreak. Demon experimentation. An entire town turned into a test site. Of all the timelines to land in, it had to be this one. His luck truly was terrible. Staying alone in that house while River Grove tore itself apart was not survival. It was suicide. At least with Dean and Sam there were weapons, experience, and, most importantly, transportation. Henry made the decision without further argument. "All right," he said. "I'll come." If he was trapped in this mess, getting a ride out of this hellhole was the most practical move he could make. He grabbed a duffel bag from the bedroom, shoved in a few clothes without overthinking it, then hesitated before taking the framed photos off the wall. Whatever this life had been before he arrived, it still mattered now. A few minutes later, he slid into the back seat of the Impala. The door shut with a heavy, solid sound. Dean started the engine without saying anything, the low rumble filling the silence as they pulled away from the house. Henry leaned forward slightly from the back seat. "Can I ask something?" Dean kept his eyes on the road. "Why are people acting like rabid dogs?" Dean didn't answer. Sam turned halfway in his seat. "The whole town's infected with something. It makes people violent. Paranoid. They turn on each other and try to spread it." Henry nodded slowly. "So it's a virus?" "Something like that," Sam said. "It spreads through blood." Henry glanced out the window at the burning cars they passed. "Then shouldn't we just get out of town?" Dean's grip tightened slightly on the wheel. "We tried. The only road out's blocked." Henry leaned back into the seat and sighed, letting his head fall against the leather. Inside, he was screaming. Great! Trapped in an infected town during demon experimentation. Fantastic! Dean glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "You're taking this pretty calm," he said. "Your neighbors are tearing each other apart, and you don't look all that surprised." Henry shrugged lightly, forcing his tone to stay even. "Strange stuff doesn't shock me anymore." Dean's eyes narrowed slightly. "Oh yeah. Once I saw something I couldn't explain," Henry said. "Looked like a ghost." Sam raised an eyebrow. "And I told people," Henry continued. "They called me an idiot. Said ghosts aren't real." Dean's mouth twitched faintly at that. "Yeah," he said dryly. "People usually do." The Impala stopped outside the local medical center. The building was small, lights still on, but the parking lot was almost empty. They stepped inside quickly. Dean walked straight to the doctor. "Doc, check him for signs of infection." The doctor didn't argue. She already knew what they were looking for. If this was what they suspected, sulfur would show up in the blood. Henry cooperated without complaint, rolling up his sleeve while the sample was taken. Dean stood nearby, watching. Sam stayed close to the door. When the doctor stepped away to run the test, Sam turned to Dean and lowered his voice. "Dean, what are we going to do with him?" Dean didn't look away from Henry. "What do you mean?" "I mean he's family," Sam said quietly. "If this town's being used for demon experimentation, they'll notice him sooner or later. Leaving him alone after this, that's dangerous." Dean kept his voice low, but firm. "What else? We teach him to hunt." Sam didn't answer right away. "We just found out we've got a cousin," he continued. "You really want to drag him into this life? You know what it does to people." Dean finally turned to look at him. "What choice do we have?" he asked evenly. He already got attacked. If demons are behind this, they've probably clocked him by now. You think leaving him somewhere is going to keep him safe? He'll be dead in a week. Sam let out a slow breath, the tension clear on his face. "We teach him to hunt," Dean repeated. "At least that way he has a chance." "Dean," Sam said, frustration slipping through despite himself, "this isn't a good life." Dean didn't argue with that. "No," he admitted. "It's not. But it's the only one we know." On Henry's side, he stayed quiet and watched Dean and Sam carefully, trying to predict what would happen next. Then the timeline lined up in his head. The demon would come soon. The nurse was already infected. In the original events, she would try to infect Sam. The whole situation wasn't chaos, it was a test. The demons wanted to see if Sam was resistant to the Croton virus, to confirm that he was different. At the same time, another thought crossed his mind. If killing an infected human triggered the system and gave him the lottery chance, what would happen if he killed a demon? Chapter 5, Demon. After about an hour, the doctor returned with the results. "So, Doc," Dean asked, "he's clean?" "Yes," the doctor replied, exhaustion heavy in her voice. "No sulfur in his blood. He's not infected." Dean nodded once. He'd only asked to check because he'd been a little suspicious that Henry might be infected, but now he was completely sure he wasn't. The virus spread through blood and contact, and Henry didn't have a single cut or open wound that suggested infected blood had gotten on him. That alone was enough to confirm it. Henry was safe. The doctor rubbed her temples. "Any change? Were you able to reach anyone outside? Is help coming?" She looked stretched thin. Her town was falling apart, people turning on each other, phones dead, roads blocked. And everything happening is really pushing her to the edge. "No," Dean answered. "Still no contact. And the only road out is blocked. We may have to blast our way through." That was why they had come here. A medical center had access to chemicals. With the right combination, they could improvise explosives. The nurse, standing near the counter, spoke in a low, defeated tone. "We're going to die here." The air in the room tightened. Henry glanced at her more carefully. "Not to be rude," Henry said cautiously, "but are we sure she's fine? She seems disturbed. Did anyone check that she's not infected?" The doctor frowned. "There's no need. She's been with us the entire time. She's not infected." The nurse, who had clearly heard everything, stiffened. Dean caught the change immediately. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes shifted, not panicked, not afraid. Calculating. That wasn't fear. That was someone hiding something. "Doc," Dean said evenly, his attention locked on her, "did you actually test her?" The nurse's grip tightened at her side. In the next second she moved. She lunged straight toward Sam, a scalpel flashing in her hand under the fluorescent lights. "Sam!" Dean barked. Dean stepped in, but she swung hard with her free hand and caught him across the jaw. The impact made a sharp thud as he stumbled into a metal cart, instruments clattering to the floor with a harsh clang-clang. Sam barely had time to react before she slammed into him, driving him backward. They hit the ground hard. The scalpel came down in a quick arc. Slice. Sam sucked in a breath as the blade cut across his forearm, blood immediately staining his sleeve. She raised the blade again, intending to slice her own hand open and infect Sam with her blood. Henry didn't think. He grabbed the nearest object, a heavy iron stool, and swung it with both hands. It connected with the side of her head with a dull, metallic crack. She flew off Sam and hit the floor, sliding across the tile. But she didn't stay down. She hit the floor hard, then jerked upright with a violent snap. Her neck twisted at a wrong angle, chin nearly touching her shoulder before it corrected with a wet crack. She threw her head back and screamed. Heroic! Her eyes locked onto Henry. Dean recovered instantly, stepping forward as he drew his gun in the same motion. Get down, he shouted. Henry threw himself to the side just as the first shot cracked through the room. Bang! The bullet hit her square in the chest, the impact jerking her backward. She stumbled but didn't fall, fingers clawing at the counter as she tried to steady herself, still pushing forward like sheer will could keep her upright. Dean adjusted his aim. Bang! The second shot struck higher. Her head snapped back, and this time her body gave out completely. She crumpled onto the tile, the sharp echo of gunfire lingering in the small clinic long after she stopped moving. Congratulations! Demon infectee eliminated. Reward granted, 1 supernatural point. Henry winced, rubbing at his ears. You know firing that in a closed room isn't exactly good for hearing, right? Dean didn't respond. He was already moving, grabbing Sam by the shoulder and pulling him upright. Did her blood get on you? Dean asked sharply. Sam glanced down at his arm and clothes, checking fast. No. It was clothes, but no. Dean's eyes scanned him anyway, making sure. Then both brothers looked at Henry. He was still holding the iron stool, breathing controlled, not shaking. They didn't say it out loud, but it was clear they had to admit their cousin handled himself better than expected. A lot better. The doctor stood frozen near the wall, staring at the nurse's body. I didn't expect. She whispered. She was with me the whole time. Sam looked at her grimly. That doesn't mean anything. The doctor swallowed hard, the realization finally settling in. If the nurse had been infected without showing it clearly, then no one in River Grove was safe. Yet, Dean said quietly. This town's gone. Then a sudden shout echoed from the front entrance of the medical center. Then came frantic knocking. The group turned as someone began pounding on the glass doors, hands slamming against them repeatedly. Help me! Let me in! A young man stood outside, face pale, eyes wide with panic. Sam stiffened immediately. That's Dwayne Tanner, he said quietly. The guy I saw in my vision. Dean's eyes narrowed as he looked through the glass. The guy I iced in your vision. Sam nodded once. Outside, Dwayne kept pounding on the door. Please. Please, I'm not infected. They're all going crazy. Amanda hesitated, looking torn. He's my neighbor's son, she said softly. But, his family was infected, maybe he is also. The glass rattled again under Dwayne's fists. So we're not opening that door, right? Henry asked, eyeing the man warily. He remembered how this was supposed to unfold. Dwayne wasn't just another desperate survivor, he was already possessed. This was the demon behind the Crotone outbreak, the one controlling the infection and orchestrating the entire experiment. Dean didn't answer immediately. His gaze stayed locked on Dwayne, studying him for signs: erratic movement, aggression, anything unnatural. Please, Dr. Amanda! Dwayne cried, pressing his forehead against the glass. I'm scared. Let me in. Sam shifted slightly. If he's not infected, leaving him out there means he's dead. And if he is infected, Dean replied evenly, opening that door means we all are. But we can check him, Sam said. If he's infected, we deal with it. Dean hesitated for a second, then moved to the door. He unlocked it, keeping his weapon ready as Dwayne stumbled inside, breathing hard and looking shaken. They didn't take chances. Dean shoved him toward an exam room while Sam grabbed restraints. Within moments Dwayne was tied to a chair, wrists secured tightly. He protested, voice strained, but didn't resist hard enough to break free. Dean ignored him. The guy had cuts along his arm, which made the risk of infection high. With the possibility that infected blood had gotten into those wounds, they couldn't take chances. So they tied him up and decided to watch him for a while to see if he started showing any signs of infection. Henry stayed in the room. He stood a few feet away, watching Dwayne carefully. As he thought of a wonderful thing to deal with this demon and situation outside. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon fire. Hand pointing right patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket get early access to future chapters and support the Chapter 6, Fooling Demon. Henry looked at Dwayne, who was shaking in the chair, breathing unevenly and looking absolutely terrified. The fear in his eyes, the tremble in his voice, it was convincing. He had to admit it. Demons were natural-born actors. Otherwise, why would they be called demons? Henry kept his tone calm. No need to worry. The blood test isn't that big of a deal. From what we've seen, the chances of getting infected seem pretty low. Dwayne slowly stopped sobbing and lifted his head. How can you say that? On the surface, it sounded desperate. Inside, the demon was thinking something entirely different. Rubbish human. What can you possibly know about a demon's masterpiece? Henry gave a small shrug, glancing toward the hallway to make sure no one was around. Dean and Sam were in the next room, busy preparing materials for explosives. Good. You heard the guy named Sam. Henry continued. He accidentally got infected blood in his wound. Didn't turn. It's been hours. So you can say the virus doesn't infect that easily. Dwayne went quiet. Then he smiled. Not wide. Not obvious. Just enough. He hadn't expected the information he came to confirm would be handed to him this easily. It seemed that Sam Winchester really was different. Special. Resistant. The demon inside Dwayne couldn't help but appreciate it. Humans truly had a terrible habit of talking too much. The demon inside Dwayne didn't consider, even for a second, that Henry had given him exactly what he wanted on purpose. As far as the demon was concerned, this was arrogance, loose information from a careless human. It never crossed its mind that Henry might be feeding it a controlled answer. After all, how would a random Winchester cousin know about possession? About the intent behind the experiment? About what the demon had come to confirm? From the demon's perspective, it had simply succeeded. Henry kept his expression steady. So just sit tight for a while, he said calmly. We'll know once the results are back. Dwayne nodded slightly, playing along. Henry stepped out of the room and shut the door behind him, locking it. Only then did he allow himself a quiet breath. His plan had worked. The demon hadn't suspected him. It believed it had learned something important about Sam. And that was the point. Sigh, now I wait, Henry muttered under his breath. Now he just had to let the next part unfold. Henry walked down the hallway and stopped at the doorway of the storage room. Dean and Sam were inside, quietly working. A few glass bottles sat lined up on a counter as they carefully poured and measured amounts of chemicals taken from the clinic's supply cabinets. The smell was sharp and unpleasant. Henry leaned slightly against the doorframe and cleared his throat. Can I come in? He asked. He made sure his voice carried just enough uncertainty. Not confident. Not too steady. Just a normal guy caught in something way over his head. Dean glanced up briefly but didn't stop working. Depends. You good with following instructions? Henry nodded. Yeah. Sam looked at him more closely. You okay? Henry gave a small, uneasy shrug. As okay as someone can be when the town's falling apart because of some mysterious virus. Dean tightened the cap on one of the bottles without looking up. Yeah, well, welcome to Tuesday. Henry hesitated just enough to look natural. By the way, you didn't even tell me your names. Dean glanced at him briefly. Dean. Sam gave a short nod. Sam. Henry shifted slightly, keeping his tone casual. So, are you also like Uncle John? My dad used to say he was rebellious when he was younger. Forged their father's signature and joined the Marines underage. Dean paused for half a second, surprised by that detail. Well, not exactly Marines, Dean continued, going back to his work, but similar idea. We protect people. From what? Henry asked, keeping his expression curious rather than knowing. Dean didn't hesitate. Demons. Ghosts. Vampires. Werewolves. Pretty much anything that goes bump in the night. Sam shot him a look. Dean. What? Dean replied without looking up. He'll find out sooner or later. Sam sighed but let it go, choosing not to press the point further. Aren't those just stories? Henry asked, letting disbelief show. They're not real. Dean looked at him plainly. They're real. And we hunt them. And whether you like it or not, you're already in the middle of it. How? Henry asked. Because this virus, Dean said, tightening the tape around a bottle, isn't medical. It's demonic. Demons are behind what's happening in this town. Henry opened his mouth in visible shock. Sam sighed quietly. That was the reaction he was used to. I know it sounds insane, Sam said, calmer than Dean. But it's the truth. And with what's happening here, someone might already know about you. Henry frowned slightly. Know about me? Our family's got enemies, Sam continued. A lot of them. If demons are running this town, and they figure out you're connected to John Winchester, you won't just be some random guy anymore. Dean gave a short nod. If you stay out there alone, you're a target. So you should come with us. There wasn't dramatics in his tone. Just fact. They couldn't just walk away from a relative they had just discovered. Winchester logic didn't work that way. Blood was blood, even if it came with complications. Henry looked between them, weighing it. I'll think about it, he said carefully, not committing. Dean studied him for a moment but didn't push. Think fast, he replied. Asterisk. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon. Fire. Hand pointing right. patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket. Get early access to future chapters currently updated up to Chapter 12. Chapter 7, Chapter 7, The beginning of a larger path. After 2 hours, evening had settled over River Grove. Henry stood near the entrance of the medical center, looking out through the glass doors at the street. An hour ago it had been chaos. Infected people roaming, shouting, breaking things, attacking anything that moved. Now there was nothing. The road was empty. Cars sat abandoned. Debris was scattered across the pavement, but there were no screams, no movement, no signs of the violent frenzy from earlier. It was too quiet. Henry narrowed his eyes slightly. It seems like my plan worked, he thought. The demon running the experiment, it only needed confirmation whether Sam was resistant. Henry had deliberately fed it the information it came to gather. That Sam had been exposed. That hours had passed. That nothing had happened. If the demon believed it had what it needed, there would be no reason to continue the experiment. And now the infected were gone. Just gone. Where did they all go? Sam asked, confusion clear in his voice as he stared at the empty street. Don't know, Henry replied, keeping his expression steady. They were roaming around like animals an hour ago. Now it's like they just vanished. Like, poof. Vanished? Dean asked, stepping closer to the glass, his face tightening. Sam's gaze remained fixed on the road. It's like Roanoke, he said slowly. The colony just disappeared. One day it was there, next day ghost town. Dean exhaled sharply, scanning the darkness outside. So what the hell did the demons want? He muttered. They show up in the morning, turn the town upside down, and by night it's over. Henry didn't hesitate. Well, at least we can leave now, he said, unable to hide the relief in his voice. He had no desire to spend another minute in a town that had just been used as a demonic lab. Dean nodded once. Yet. I'm getting sick of this ghost town. Sammy, pack the explosives. If the road's still blocked, we'll blast our way through. Sam started gathering the bottles, then paused. What about the guy we locked up? Dean glanced toward the hallway. Have the doc run the test. If he's clean, we let him go. If not. He didn't finish the sentence. They brought Dwayne out and ran the blood test. No sulfur. Clean. Dean untied him, watching closely for any sign of aggression. Dwayne looked shaken, but stable. He didn't say much before leaving the clinic, disappearing into the quiet streets. Henry stayed silent the entire time. He knew Dwayne was possessed. But saying that out loud right now would create more problems than it solved. They didn't have a demon trap set up. No devil's trap painted. No immediate way to contain him. They had holy water and an exorcism, sure, but if the demon chose violence first, someone could die before the Latin even started. So Henry kept his thoughts to himself. For now, getting out of River Grove alive was the priority. So, Doc, you're not coming? Dean asked, one hand resting on the driver's door of the Impala. You sure about staying alone in a ghost town? Amanda shook her head, exhaustion written across her face. Someone has to stay. Someone has to report what happened here, authorize emergency response. I can't just leave. Dean gave a small nod. He understood responsibility when he heard it. Good luck with that. He slid into the driver's seat and shut the door. The engine rumbled to life. Dean glanced back toward the rear door, where Henry stood hesitating. So, cousin, Dean called out, you riding with us, or you want us to drop you in some other town? Henry stood still for a moment, thinking. At first he had resisted the idea. Tagging along with the Winchesters meant danger on a level he hadn't even imagined before today. Monsters. Demons. Things that didn't follow human rules. But now there was the system. It had reacted when he killed something supernatural. It rewarded action. If that pattern held, staying near the source of supernatural trouble meant opportunities. Growth. Strength. He was still scared. Anyone sane would be. But hiding somewhere else wouldn't make the world safer. He exhaled. You know, Henry said, giving a small, awkward shrug, I was basically a bum. Stayed home, drank too much, didn't do much of anything. Now my house is gone, my town's a disaster, and apparently demons are real. Dean waited. So, Henry continued, if the offer to tag along still stands, at least I'll get food, right? Dean smirked faintly. You don't eat my fries. Sam almost smiled. Dean jerked his head toward the back seat. Get in. Henry opened the rear door and slid into the back of the Impala. The door shut. River Grove disappeared behind them as the Impala rolled into the night. Henry leaned back in the seat and quietly opened the system interface in his mind. A translucent screen appeared before him. Supernatural system. End goal: become the strongest supernatural in the Omniverse. System points: 2. Available purchases: Demon Immunity 20. Demon Blade 50. Good Luck Hex Bag 40, 1-day use. Guns Proficiency 5. Angel Fragment 1000. Shop Refresh Condition: shop can only refresh when at least 3 items are purchased. Gotcha, triggered by killing supernatural entities. Reward tier depends on luck. Available tiers: Common, Uncommon, Rare, Epic, Legendary, Mythical, God. Henry stared at the list. 2 points. That was it. Guns proficiency was 5 points within reach. Everything else was out of range for now. He sighed. It looks like I really have to work hard to become stronger. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon. Fire. Hand pointing right. patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket. Get early access to future chapters currently updated up to Chapter 16. Chapter 8, Roadhouse. The next morning, the Impala was parked outside a roadside diner. Inside, the place smelled of coffee and fried bacon. A few truckers occupied the far booths, paying no attention to the 3 men at the corner table. Henry sat across from Dean and Sam, halfway through his breakfast. He hadn't realized how hungry he actually was until the plate arrived. Sam was quiet, staring at his coffee. Dean noticed it first. "Don't tell me," he said, leaning back slightly. "You had another creepy vision." Sam didn't deny it. "Yeah," he admitted. "Last night." Dean's expression tightened just a bit. "About what?" Sam ran a hand through his hair, choosing his words carefully. "He was psychic. Like me. He could electrify things just by touching them. And something killed him." Henry kept his eyes on his plate but listened closely. Dean took a bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly. "Wow. Creepy." He tried to keep it casual, but there was tension under it. Every time Sam mentioned visions, it dragged up the same memory: his dad's warning. "Save Sam, or kill him before it's too late." "That's all you have to say?" Sam asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "What do you want me to do, Sam?" Dean replied. "Light a candle and hold your hand." "This isn't a joke," Sam said, leaning forward. "He's like me. Psychic. And whatever killed him is coming after people like us. We need to figure out what's going on." Dean's jaw tightened. "No, Sam." Sam blinked. "No. No," Dean repeated firmly. "We don't go chasing every psychic out there. We've got enough on our plates." Sam's voice dropped. "This isn't random. I could feel it. It's connected." Dean held his gaze. "Every time you get one of these visions, it leads back to the same thing. Yellow-eyed demon. Psychic kids. You think I don't see that?" The tension between them thickened. Henry stayed quiet, watching the argument build. "That's exactly why we have to go," Sam said, voice tight. "Whatever killed him, how do you know it can't come after me next?" Dean didn't answer immediately. "How can you be sure I'm not next?" Sam pressed. Dean looked away for a moment, jaw working, but Sam didn't back down. The tension stretched long enough that even Henry felt it. Finally, Dean exhaled. "Fine," he said. "We check it out." Sam nodded once. "And if we're looking for psychics," Dean added, "we go somewhere that knows things." Which meant one place. The Roadhouse. The trio walked into the dimly lit bar later that afternoon. The familiar hum of low music and murmured conversations filled the space. Hunters sat at scattered tables, maps spread out, beer bottles half empty. Ellen looked up from behind the bar. "Well, look who decided to show up," she said. Dean gave a faint smirk. "Miss us?" "Not particularly," Ellen replied, though there was no real heat in it. Sam stepped forward. "Ellen, how's Joe?" Ellen's expression shifted. "She's gone," Ellen said. "After that job she ran with you two, she decided she wanted to keep hunting." Dean stiffened slightly. "I told her not under my roof," Ellen continued. "So she packed up and left. Haven't seen her in weeks. She sends a postcard now and then." Sam's face tightened. "I'm sorry." Dean nodded quietly. "Yet. We didn't mean for." Ellen cut him off with a small shake of her head. "She made her choice." Her eyes shifted past them, landing on Henry. "And who might this be?" "New face?" Ellen asked. Dean glanced over his shoulder. "Family." Ellen raised a brow. "Oh. Cousin," Sam clarified. "Dad's brother's son." Ellen studied Henry for a long second, measuring him the way hunters did: posture, eyes, hands, whether he looked like he belonged or would bolt at the first ghost story. Henry gave a small nod. "Henry." "Ellen," she replied. "You hunt?" Henry hesitated just enough. "Not officially." Dean smirked faintly. "Working on it." Ellen didn't smile. "If he's sticking around you two, he better learn fast." Then they found Ash in the back room, surrounded by monitors, wires, and half-empty beer cans. "We need a search," Sam said. "Nationwide. People our age. Psychic abilities. And their mothers died in nursery fires." Ash spun slowly in his chair, blinking behind his glasses. "That's specific." "Yeah," Dean replied. "We're past general." Ash started typing, fingers flying across the keyboard as screens filled with databases and cross-referenced records. "All right, filtering for unexplained maternal deaths in house fires, roughly 23 years ago, cross-matching with current reports of unusual activity, psychic manifestations." A few minutes passed. "Got something," Ash said finally. 4 names appeared on the screen. "Sam Winchester," Ash read off casually. Dean gave Sam a look. "Well, that tracks." "Max Miller. Andy Gallagher. Scott Carey." Sam leaned forward. "Address for Scott." Ash tapped a few keys. "You don't want an address. You want a headstone." Sam's stomach tightened. "Scott Carey," Ash continued. "Lafayette, Indiana. Died about a month ago. Stabbed in a parking lot." Ash pulled up a photo attached to the report. Sam stared at the screen. "The face. That was him." "That's him," Sam said quietly. "That's the guy from my vision." Dean looked at him sideways. "So now you're seeing the past too?" Henry, standing a little behind them, let out a silent sigh. He had genuinely believed he'd nudged the timeline off course back in River Grove, that by interfering there he might have prevented the fallout between Sam and Dean. Maybe even avoided crossing paths with that psychopath. Gordon. Or was it Garden? No. Gordon Walker. The self-righteous hunter who believed murdering psychic kids qualified as public service. Henry rubbed his temple subtly. "So we're doing this," he thought. The plot clearly didn't care about his attempts to be clever. "I should really start working on a plan to put that psychopath in jail for life," Henry thought. Killing Gordon would solve the problem. But prison? That would be cleaner. And far more irritating for someone like him. Asterisk. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon. Fire. Hand pointing right. patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket. Get early access to future chapters currently updated up to Chapter 17. Chapter 9, Gordon Walker. Sam, Dean, and Henry paid a visit to Scott Carey's father, posing as old friends from high school who hadn't heard about what happened. Mr. Carey looked tired in a way that went deeper than grief. When Sam gently asked about Scott, the man hesitated before answering. "He changed," Mr. Carey said quietly. "About a year ago. It started with headaches. Bad ones. Then nightmares. He said someone was watching him." Dean exchanged a brief look with Sam. "He got paranoid after that," Mr. Carey continued. "Depressed. We tried getting him help. Therapy, medication. He refused most of it. Locked himself in his room for days at a time." Sam nodded sympathetically. "Mind if we take a look at his room?" After a moment's hesitation, Mr. Carey agreed. Upstairs, Scott's room felt frozen in time. Clothes half folded. Curtains drawn. The air stale. Sam walked to the dresser and picked up 3 pill bottles lined up neatly. He read the labels: antidepressants, sleep aids, something for anxiety. He slipped one into his pocket. Dean moved toward the closet and pushed aside a row of hanging shirts. Behind them, taped directly to the wall, was a collage. Dozens of pictures. All the same. Yellow eyes. Layered, overlapping, staring out from newspaper clippings, printed photos, hand-drawn sketches. Sam stared at it, his jaw tightening. "He knew," Sam said quietly. "He was connected." Dean looked at the wall and let out a low breath. "Okay. Creepy. And definitely strange." Meanwhile, Henry was outside in the car, fiddling awkwardly with the handgun Dean had handed him for self-defense. It was a fairly standard 2006 semi-automatic pistol, nothing fancy, just reliable. He checked the safety again. "I probably should have mentioned I don't actually know how to shoot," Henry muttered to himself with a faint smile. But he hadn't said anything earlier. Who says no when someone offers them a gun in a world full of demons? He adjusted his grip, trying to look like he belonged. Then, crack! A sharp sound sliced through the quiet street. Glass shattered somewhere nearby. Henry's head snapped up. The first-floor window of Scott's house had exploded inward. "Hey!" He pushed the car door open and stepped out, scanning instinctively. Then another sound followed. Bang! That wasn't glass. That was a gunshot. Henry's stomach dropped. "Damn it, that psychopath's here," he muttered. Across the street, on the roof of a building facing the house, he spotted movement: a figure prone behind a sniper rifle, lined up with the shattered window. "Gordon!" Henry swallowed and raised his handgun toward the rooftop. The distance was terrible for a pistol. His hands weren't perfectly steady. "Here goes nothing," he muttered. He squeezed the trigger. Bang! The shot rang out. It didn't hit. Yet. "I suck at aiming," he muttered, already moving. He shoved the gun back into his waistband and scanned fast. Across the street. Rooftop. Angle. He spotted a rock near the curb and snatched it up without thinking. No time to overanalyze. He stepped forward, feet planting hard against the pavement. His body twisted slightly at the waist like a pitcher winding up. He pulled his arm back. Activated the super strength of the cursed t-shirt. His muscles tightened instantly, forearm locking, shoulder loaded with power. Then he threw. His whole body moved with it, hips snapping forward, shoulder driving through, wrist cracking at the last second to give it spin. The rock tore through the air. Then, clang! It smashed into the sniper rifle with a violent metallic crack. The impact jolted the barrel offline, the shot going wide as the weapon jerked sideways. On the rooftop, Gordon reacted instantly. He rolled back from the ledge, disappearing from sight in one smooth, disciplined motion. Asterisk. Dean and Sam rushed out of the house, Dean visibly pissed. "I told you we shouldn't have come," Dean snapped, scanning the rooftops automatically. They stopped when they saw Henry standing near the car, looking around cautiously. Dean walked up fast. "Tell me you saw who fired at us." Henry nodded. "Yeah. Black guy. Almost bald. Looked steady. Not random. Moved like a hunter." Dean and Sam exchanged a look immediately. They both knew exactly who fit that description. Dean's jaw tightened. "Gordon." Sam didn't argue. Gordon stormed back into his motel room, furious. He had almost killed that abomination. Almost ended the threat before it grew worse. But he hadn't expected someone else outside the house. Another shooter. Another variable. If that kid hadn't fired back, Sam Winchester would be dead. Gordon removed his jacket, still irritated. Then, a fist slammed into his face. His head snapped sideways. "Hi, Gordon." Everything went black. When Gordon came to, he was tied to a chair. Dean stood in front of him. Sam was off to the side. Henry moved to the table with quiet efficiency. He pulled out a handkerchief and wrapped it around his hand before touching anything. One by one, he lifted the confiscated weapons and placed them down in plain view, careful, deliberate, not tossing but not fussing either. The handgun. The knife. Spare rounds. Then the separated sniper components, arranged clearly so nothing was hidden. Gordon blinked once, then smiled faintly. "Sam." "Dean." Dean didn't return the smile. His fist launched forward and smashed into Gordon's face. "You son of a bitch," Dean growled, grabbing his collar. "You tried to kill us. You that desperate you can't let go of one damn case." Gordon wiped blood from his lip, still smiling. "I didn't come to kill you, Dean. I came to kill your brother." Sam stiffened. "Me? Why?" "Don't play innocent," Gordon said, eyes locking onto him. "I know what you are. Psychic. Just like the others. A demon's little projects." "That's bullshit," Dean snapped. "Call it whatever you want," Gordon replied evenly. "I hunt monsters. All of them. The psychic kids? They're connected. Demons don't hand out gifts for free." Sam's voice hardened. "So you killed Scott?" "Yes," Gordon answered without hesitation. "That freak could electrocute someone just by touching them. You think that ends well? You think he would have lived a normal life?" "He hadn't killed anyone," Sam shot back. "And you want me to wait until he does?" Gordon fired back. "You nip it in the bud. Same goes for you, Sam. I would have put you down already if not for your new friend out there." Henry said nothing. Dean tightened his grip on Gordon's collar. "You don't get to decide who lives and who dies." Gordon's smile returned, colder this time. "That's exactly what hunters do, Dean. Asterisk. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon. Fire. Hand pointing right. patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket. Get early access to future chapters currently updated up to Chapter 19. Chapter 10, Chapter 10, Haunted Marriage. After 10 minutes, the sound of sirens cut through the air. 2 police cars pulled up in front of the motel. Doors opened. Officers stepped out. A moment later, they brought Gordon out in handcuffs. He didn't struggle. Didn't look scared either. Just angry. "It seems that's the end of Gordon," Dean said, watching as they pushed him into the back of the cruiser. "Yeah," Henry replied quietly. Sam stood a little apart, arms crossed. He had stopped Dean earlier. Dean had been ready to end it right there, one bullet for trying to kill him. Sam wouldn't allow it. Gordon was still human. And Henry had stepped in with a better option. No hunting justice. No revenge killing. Just evidence. Shooting into a residential area. Attempted murder. Scott Carey's death. Illegal firearms. A sniper rifle set up across from a private home. They hadn't needed to fabricate anything. They just had to call it in. Gordon glanced at them once before the door shut. No smile this time. The cruiser pulled away. Asterisk. Night wrapped the cemetery in fog and weak moonlight, the kind of place where bad decisions felt inevitable. Henry didn't even see it coming. 1 second he was standing. The next, something invisible slammed into him and sent him flying through the air. He crashed hard into a tree trunk with a pained yell. Can I not have one full night of sleep in this universe, he thought as he slid down the bark and hit the ground, air knocked from his lungs. He rolled onto his side, groaning. That was when the temperature around his legs dropped. A pale woman materialized at his feet, her face twisted with grief and rage. Her hands shot down and clamped around his ankles like iron restraints. Oh, come on! She dragged him across the grass. Gravestones blurred past as dirt and dead leaves scraped against his back. Guys! Little help here! Henry shouted, digging his fingers into the ground as if that would do anything. Do we look like we can help? Dean yelled back. Dean himself was being flung sideways by another ghost, slamming shoulder first into a headstone before stumbling back upright with his shotgun raised. Sam was kneeling by an open grave, frantically pouring salt over a corpse. I'm busy, he snapped. 30 seconds. Why is it always 30 seconds? Henry yelled as he was dragged past a crooked marker that read 1896. The ghost jerked him harder, pulling him toward a cluster of trees. Henry twisted, trying to kick free, but her grip didn't loosen. Then his hand brushed against something cold and solid in the grass. Iron. An old rusted rod, probably part of a broken fence. He grabbed it instantly. All right, he muttered, gritting his teeth as he was dragged another few feet. He braced his free leg, twisted his torso, and swung the rod downward with force. The iron connected with the ghost's arm. She shrieked, the sound sharp and unnatural, and her form flickered violently. Henry didn't stop. He swung again, this time straight through her torso. The rod passed through glowing mist, and the spirit burst apart in a violent shimmer of light before vanishing completely. The dragging stopped. Henry rolled onto his stomach, coughing dirt out of his mouth. Behind him, Sam struck a match and tossed it into the two salted graves. Flames exploded from both sides at once. The ghosts shrieked. Their forms warped and thinned as the fire consumed them, outlines tearing apart like paper in a storm. The sound stretched into something inhuman before breaking entirely. Silence returned to the cemetery. Dean walked over, brushing dirt off his jacket. You alive? Henry pushed himself up slowly, still gripping the iron rod. Yeah, he said between breaths. Sam, you really should have done more research. Dean huffed a laugh despite the dirt on his face. He's got you there. This case was supposed to be simple. A string of slashing incidents. People in their own kitchens, grabbing their meat cleavers and cutting themselves to death. No break-ins. No signs of struggle. Just blood and a suicide note vibe every time. Sam had tracked the pattern. All the victims were customers of the same meat shop. The owner had supposedly killed himself weeks earlier. That was the angle. Angry spirit of a butcher taking revenge from beyond the grave. Clean. Logical. Except it wasn't just one ghost. They had dug the butcher's remains first. Thought that would end it. 5 seconds later, Dean got thrown across the cemetery by someone they hadn't accounted for. Turns out, Henry muttered, dusting dirt off his shirt, he had a +1. Sam rubbed the back of his neck, clearly annoyed with himself. The shop owner's wife died 2 years before him. Car accident. I didn't think she'd end up a ghost too. And now she's mad too, Dean added dryly. Henry leaned on the iron rod, glancing at the burning grave. Or maybe the butcher didn't just kill himself, he said. Maybe she was already haunting him. Pushed him over the edge. If she stuck around, there could have been more activity we didn't connect. Dean tilted his head slightly. So you're saying haunted marriage? Henry sighed. I'm just saying, even in death, some wives are scary. Dean gave him a look. Careful. You keep talking like that, something's gonna follow you home. Henry was about to reply when the familiar translucent screen flashed in front of his vision. Dash. Congratulations. 2 ghosts eliminated. Reward granted, 8 supernatural points. Total points, 10. Lucky wheel activated. Uncommon lottery triggered 25% chance. Spin the wheel. Dash. Henry kept his face neutral while mentally hitting spin. The wheel rotated quickly, icons flashing past random weapons, charms, strange artifacts. Then it slowed. Stopped. Dash. Item acquired, Ghost Hacker Specs. Effect, grants superior hacking skills to the wearer. Curse, extended use may trigger obsessive screen addiction and sudden urges to headbutt solid surfaces. Dash. Henry blinked. Hacking glasses. In a world of demons and angels. Of course, he thought. Still, information was power. And in a modern hunt, access to police databases, surveillance systems, credit trails that wasn't useless. Asterisk. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon. Fire. Hand pointing right. patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket. Get early access to future chapters currently updated up to Chapter 20. Chapter 11, Chapter 11, Hacking. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They had driven in after reports of 2 separate robberies. In both cases, employees stole from their own workplaces. Clean jobs, no forced entry. Then that same night, each of them went home and committed suicide. Pattern. That was why they were here. Dean and Sam had gone inside to talk to one of the employees who worked at the second location. Henry chose to stay in the car. Interrogations weren't really his thing. Instead, he was admiring his new laptop. Brand new. Latest model available in 2007. Fastest processor on the market. Glossy screen. Clean keyboard. He ran a hand over it proudly. As for the money, well, he had burned through most of what he'd found in his old house. Between motel stays, food, and this laptop, he was basically broke now. Penniless. But not for long. He adjusted the Ghost Hacker specs and glanced at the screen again. With this and the laptop, he could create things. Accounts. Trails. Clean digital identities. A quiet offshore setup with numbers that didn't raise alarms. Having money behind you gave a certain peace of mind. The Impala's doors opened. Dean and Sam got back in. Yeah, Dean said as he started the engine. Definitely a shapeshifter. Sam nodded. Both robberies fit the pattern. Same behavior. It steals, then the real person ends up dead. Cleans up loose ends. Also, Sam added, it's going after cash. High payout targets. Dean snorted. Greedy thing. Dean glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Henry focused on the laptop. Hey, Dean said. You watching porn back there? Henry didn't even look up. Not everyone is like you, Dean. I just got this thing. I'm testing it. Dean smirked. Uh-huh. It doesn't even have Wi-Fi right now, Henry added dryly. How exactly am I supposed to stream anything? Sam glanced back at him. You coming in on this one? There was a pause in his voice. Shapeshifters were messy. They copied faces, framed people, turned simple jobs into disasters. One mistake and things got ugly fast. Henry shook his head. I was thinking I'll sit this one out. Good decision, Dean said immediately. They parked near City Bank of Milwaukee. Dean and Sam walked in dressed as security system technicians, toolkits in hand and fake credentials ready. Henry stayed across the street at a small coffee shop that conveniently advertised free Wi-Fi. He opened his laptop and adjusted the ghost hacker specs over his eyes. "All right," he muttered, "let's see what you can do." The screen seemed sharper. Interfaces clearer. Lines of code easier to follow. Across the street, Dean and Sam accessed the bank's security room. They pulled up footage, scanning angles and timestamps. On one feed, they froze a frame the bank manager glancing at a camera. For a split second, his eyes flared unnaturally. Shapeshifter. Back at the cafe, Henry worked quickly. He slipped into one of the largest banking networks in the country. Firewalls that should have taken hours folded in minutes. Logs rerouted. Traces redirected. He built a clean account layered behind proxy institutions and staggered routing. Untraceable. Even to the bank. He took the fake credit card Dean had lifted from a previous case and linked it to the account. Then he modified the card's digital footprint so every transaction would register under a different alias and branch location. Different name. Different bank trail. Same hidden account feeding it. Clean. 30 minutes later, he leaned back and pulled off the specs. A strange irritation crept into his skull. For a second, he felt an urge to slam his head against the table. He blinked and steadied himself. "Right," he muttered. "Cursed items." He rubbed his temples until the feeling passed. Across the street, sirens suddenly wailed. Henry looked up sharply. The job inside the bank had just escalated. Henry frowned and adjusted the specs again. "Is this supposed to be hard?" he muttered. He tapped into the internal security feed and pulled up live footage from the bank's cameras. Then he nearly choked on his drink. What the? On screen, the situation was a mess. A fat guy man waving a gun. Customers captured in the vault. Dean and Sam standing there looking just as confused as everyone else. Henry rubbed his forehead. "Right. I forgot about this part. You couldn't expect him to remember every detail of every episode." He immediately pulled out his phone and called Sam. Sam picked up on the second ring. "Yeah. Sam, police are outside. I'm seeing squad cars stack up. They're already escalating this. If you stay too long, you're walking into an FBI situation." "We know," Sam replied tensely. "We heard the sirens. But the shapeshifter changed again. We're heading back to the security room to see what changed." "No need," Henry said quickly. "I'm in the back-end security system. I can see everything. The shapeshifter's current form is a black guy. Vault. He's in the vault with the hostages." There was a short pause on the line. "You sure?" Sam asked. "I'm looking at him right now. He's blending in with the captured employees." Sam didn't hang up. He turned toward Dean. "Dean. The shapeshifter's in the vault." Dean's eyes hardened instantly. "Then let's go finish this." Dean, Sam, and Ron moved toward the vault. The moment the door opened, the hostages inside stiffened. Some of them shrank back against the safety deposit boxes. Others just stared at the rifle in Ron's hands. Sam scanned the room calmly. Then he saw him. Black. Bald. Standing slightly apart from the others. Watching too closely. There was only one man in that vault who matched Henry's description. Sam pointed. "You. Step out." The man flinched. "Just a little." "Why?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Dean shrugged casually. "We're thinking of letting someone go. Show the cops we're reasonable. You get to deliver our demands." "No," the man said quickly, taking a step back. "I'll stay." "Send someone else." "Wrong answer." A few of the hostages immediately spoke up. "Yeah, let me go. Please take me." Dean's expression hardened. He pointed towards Ron's rifle slightly, not dramatic, just enough to make the point. "We're the ones holding the gun," Dean said evenly. "So let's not drag this out. Walk." The bald man hesitated again. Sam stepped closer. "Now." For a second, tension thickened in the air. Then the man slowly stepped forward, jaw tight. Dean grabbed his arm and steered him out of the vault. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon. Fire. Hand pointing right. patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket. Get early access to future chapters currently updated up to Chapter 22. Chapter 12, Chapter 12, Surprise. They pushed him into a small office and Dean shut the door firmly behind them. Ron stayed outside in the hallway, breathing hard and clutching the rifle. He was already unstable. This part wasn't for him. The bald man stood in the center of the room, eyes moving calmly between them. Dean stepped forward and pulled the silver knife from his jacket. "You know what I hate about your kind," Dean said, voice tight but controlled. "You're nasty psychopaths. You steal someone's identity, wreck their life, then dump the face and move on like it's nothing." The man frowned faintly. "I don't know what you're talking about." Dean didn't slow down. "Oh, you will. Soon as I stick you with this." Sam moved first. He lunged to grab him. The shapeshifter reacted instantly. A fist slammed into Sam's face, snapping his head sideways. The creature smiled faintly as its eyes flickered for just a moment, something inhuman flashing beneath. Dean stepped in and drove the knife forward. The shapeshifter grabbed a metal trash bin and whipped it at Dean. It hit his forearm, knocking the blade off course and sending it scraping across the desk instead of flesh. Sam recovered fast and tackled the creature from behind, wrapping his arms around its chest. "Dean now!" Sam shouted. The shapeshifter twisted sharply and drove an elbow into Sam's ribs. Once. Hard. Then it kicked backward, heel slamming into Sam's thigh and breaking his hold. Dean charged again, knife raised. The creature seized a chair and swung it hard across Dean's path. Dean raised the knife to strike, aiming for the heart, but the impact threw him off balance. The blade drove into the shapeshifter's shoulder instead of its chest. It hissed sharply. Before Dean could pull the knife free, the shapeshifter grabbed him by the collar and hurled him sideways. Dean slammed straight into Sam, knocking them both into the wall. The shapeshifter ripped the knife out of its own shoulder without hesitation and flung it across the room. It clattered uselessly under a desk. Then it moved for the door. Dean tried to push up. Too late. The shapeshifter yanked the door open. Ron was standing right outside, wide-eyed, gun halfway raised. He didn't even get a word out. The shapeshifter backhanded him casually. Ron flew sideways into the hallway wall and crumpled to the floor, dazed. The creature didn't pause. It bolted down the corridor, already shifting, bones cracking under rippling skin as it ran. Dean pushed himself upright, jaw clenched. "Sam, move!" The shapeshifter sprinted toward the bank's back exit, knocking over a trash can as he ran. The alley door was only a few steps away now. He grabbed the handle and yanked. The door suddenly flew open from the other side and slammed straight into his face. Bang! He stumbled backward, crashed onto the floor, vision spinning. He groaned and rolled onto his side. Standing in the doorway was a uniformed police officer. Except it wasn't. Henry stepped inside, adjusting the slightly oversized police jacket he'd borrowed. He looked down at the bald man sprawled on the ground. "Oh. It's you," Henry said calmly, pulling out the police baton. The shapeshifter's eyes narrowed. He sprang up and lunged without warning, fist swinging toward Henry's head. Henry barely shifted aside in time. The punch grazed past him, close enough to feel the air move. Time for super strength. The surge hit instantly. His muscles tightened and steadied. He planted his feet and swung the baton with full force. The crack echoed down the hallway. The shapeshifter's head snapped to the side and his body lifted clean off the ground, slamming into the wall before dropping heavily to the floor again. Footsteps pounded behind him. Dean and Sam arrived just as the shapeshifter tried to push himself up again, face already starting to ripple. Dean didn't waste a second. He charged forward, jumped, and drove the silver knife down with both hands straight into the creature's heart. The shapeshifter jerked violently, features flickering between stolen faces before going still. Dean stayed crouched over him for a moment, breathing hard. Sam straightened slowly and stared at Henry. "Why are you in a cop uniform?" Henry hesitated for half a second. "Well, a few minutes earlier. In the alley behind the bank, one patrol car had pulled up. Two officers stepped out, weapons drawn, trying to get eyes on the back entrance." Henry took a breath and smeared some ketchup across his stomach to make it convincing. Then he stumbled out from the side of the building into their line of sight. "Help!" he gasped, clutching his side. Both officers immediately lowered their aim slightly. "Sir! Stay where you are," one shouted, moving toward him. "You're hurt." "They're inside," Henry said weakly. "I barely got out." He let his knees buckle just enough to sell it. The closer officer holstered his weapon halfway and reached for his shoulder. That was the mistake. Super strength. Henry snapped upright and drove a punch straight into the officer's jaw. The man dropped hard onto the pavement. The second officer reached for his gun, but Henry was already moving. He stepped in, grabbed the man's wrist, twisted, and slammed his elbow into the officer's ribs before shoving him into the squad car. The officer hit the door and collapsed. Both were unconscious. "Sorry," he muttered. He stripped the uniform jacket, hat, and baton from one officer, pulling them on quickly. He dragged both officers behind the patrol car so they wouldn't be immediately visible from the street. Then he adjusted the cap, picked up the baton, and walked toward the back entrance just in time to meet a shapeshifter trying to escape. Back in the hallway of the bank, Henry shrugged slightly. "Long story," he said. **. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon. Fire. Hand pointing right. patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket. Get early access to future chapters currently updated up to Chapter 23. Chapter 13, Chapter 13, Disappeared. Congratulations! 1 shapeshifter eliminated. Reward granted, 3 supernatural points. They slipped out through the back exit into the alley. Ron was standing there, still clutching the shotgun, eyes wide and adrenaline burning through him. Sam stepped toward him. "You need to leave. Right now. Get out of the city and don't come back." Ron blinked. "Why?" Dean stared at him. "Because you walked into a bank with a rifle. You think that's not going to follow you? But I came to find the Mandriad who Ron started." "Doesn't matter," Dean cut him off sharply. "You think the cops are gonna care about your theory? All they'll see is an armed robbery." Ron's face fell as reality finally settled in. "Yeah," he muttered. "I'm screwed." Sirens wailed closer. Henry glanced toward the street entrance. "Guys, I think we should move." He pulled off the borrowed police jacket and cap and tossed them into the back of the patrol car. Dean nodded once. "Time to go." They didn't wait. Dean and Sam took off down the alley toward the Impala. Henry followed, keeping pace. Behind them, Ron stood frozen for half a second before deciding survival was more important than pride. He ran too. The next morning, in a cheap motel just outside Greenfield, Henry was dead asleep. The banging on the door was violent enough to rattle the frame. "I don't need room service," Henry muttered, dragging a pillow over his head. "I'm not room service. It's Dean. Open up, came the irritated reply. Henry groaned, rolled off the bed, and staggered toward the door. He unlocked it and pulled it open with half-lidded eyes. Dean. I am not a morning person, Henry said. Dean pushed past him without asking and scanned the room quickly, like he expected something to jump out from behind the curtains. Did you see Sam? Dean asked. Henry blinked. Why? What happened? Dean's jaw was tight. He's gone. Henry straightened a little. Gone as in breakfast gone or gone as in missing? Missing, Dean said flatly. Henry felt the sleep leave him instantly. Come again, he said. Dean turned to face him fully. Sam's missing. And I've got a bad feeling about it. Dean and Henry went straight to the front office. The receptionist was half asleep behind the counter, flipping through a magazine. He barely looked up when Dean approached. Did you see my brother leave? Dean asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The guy shrugged. People check in. People check out. I don't track 'em. Dean's expression darkened. He didn't check out. Another shrug. Then I guess he's still around. Henry stepped in before Dean lost it. Can we check your security footage? Henry asked calmly. The receptionist blinked at him like he'd just asked for nuclear launch codes. Security footage, the guy repeated. This is a roadside motel, man. We got keys and vending machines. That's it. No cameras. Henry pressed. No cameras. Asterisk. They ended up at a small diner a few miles from the motel. Dean was at a corner booth, phone pressed to his ear. Ellen, it's Dean, yet. You heard from Sam. He paused, listening. No, he didn't call you? Didn't mention heading anywhere. Henry sat across from him with his laptop open, ghost hacker specs resting low on his nose. Dean ran a hand through his hair. All right. If he contacts you, you call me. Immediately. He hung up. No luck? Henry asked without looking up. No, Dean replied. He didn't reach out to her. Henry nodded and kept typing. He had already pulled nearby traffic feeds and a few gas station cameras within a mile of the motel. Most showed nothing but empty roads in the early dawn. Then one clip caught his eye. Dean, Henry said quietly. I found him. He turned the laptop slightly. On the screen, grainy footage from a small parking lot near the motel showed Sam approaching a parked sedan. He looked tense but steady. And then he broke the window. Dean leaned closer. What the hell is he doing? The video showed Sam hotwiring the car and driving off into the dark. This was early morning, Henry said. Before sunrise. Dean stared at the screen. He stole a car. It rules out kidnapping, Henry replied. He left on his own. Can you track where that car went? Dean asked. Henry hesitated slightly. The specs were already warming against his temples. It may take time, Henry said, as he couldn't continuously use the ghost hacker specs. Dean leaned back, restless. Then try fast. Henry raised a hand toward the waitress passing by. Large coffee, he said. Cold if you have it. Dean shot him a look. Henry adjusted the specs and focused back on the screen. At the same time, in another room, Sam woke with a sharp breath. His head hurt, but not enough to slow him. He tried to move and felt rope cutting into his wrists and ankles. He was tied to a chair. Sam looked around carefully. Plain room. One table. One lamp. No visible windows. The air felt closed in. Dean, he called out. No response. He tested the ropes again, checking the knots carefully. They were tight and deliberate. The door opened. A woman stepped in and closed it behind her. You're awake, Sam, she said. Did you miss me? Sam looked at her closely. She seemed familiar, but not enough. "Who are you?" he asked. She smiled faintly and stepped closer. "You forgot already? After all that time we spent on the road? We even had a few sweet moments together." Her eyes turned black. Sam's expression changed. Meg. Chapter 14, Chapter 14, Meg and Doubts. "What do you want, Meg? And where's Dean? What did you do to him?" Sam asked, keeping his voice steady despite the ropes cutting into his wrists. Meg pulled a chair across the floor and sat down directly in front of him, folding her hands in her lap like this was a casual conversation. "Relax," she said lightly. "Dean's not my priority." "You are." "That doesn't answer my question." She tilted her head. "You always were the curious one. Always digging for answers. Even when you don't like what you find." "I'm not interested in whatever game you're playing," Sam replied. "If you're here to threaten me, just get to it." Meg leaned back slightly. "Poor Sam," she said with a trace of mock sympathy. "You don't even know the full story about yourself." Sam's expression hardened. "I know enough." "Do you?" she asked quietly. "Then do you know what your dad said to Dean before he died?" Meg leaned forward slightly. "He asked Dean to kill you, Sam," she said, her tone calm and deliberate. "Your own father told him if he couldn't save you, he had to kill you." Sam's jaw tightened. "That's a lie," he said, though his voice had lost a fraction of its certainty. "Is it?" Meg replied. "Ask him. Ask Dean what John whispered to him in that hospital room." Sam's breathing grew heavier, but he forced himself to stay controlled. "You're trying to get inside my head," he said. "That's all this is." Meg smiled faintly. "I don't need to get inside your head. I just need to tell you the truth." She leaned back in the chair, crossing her legs. "And I'm only telling you because you're going to see it soon," she continued calmly. "I'm going to possess you. I'll make you kill someone. Then I'll make Dean kill you with his own hands." Sam's eyes darkened, but he didn't look away. "It'll break him," Meg added. "Watching his little brother turn evil. Thinking you chose the other side." "Dean would never do that," Sam said firmly. Meg tilted her head. "Wouldn't he?" She leaned forward slightly. "You know he's scared of you," she said. "The visions. The psychic stuff. The demon connection. Every time something happens, he looks at you like he's waiting for the other shoe to drop." Sam swallowed but kept his voice steady. "You're lying." Meg smiled slowly. "Ask him what your dad told him before he died. Ask him why he watches you the way he does." Sam didn't respond. Meg's voice softened, but the words stayed sharp. "He's already halfway there, Sam. I'd just be giving him a reason." Asterisk. The next day. Fortville. The Impala rolled into the small town after Henry tracked the stolen car's last known location to this area. It had been found abandoned just outside town limits. Dean stepped out of the car and scanned the quiet street, tension written across his face. "You sure he's here?" Dean asked, shutting the door behind him. Henry walked around to the front of the car and looked down the road. "The car stopped here," he said. "No record of it leaving town. If Sam ditched it, he's somewhere nearby." He was clearly confused by the way Sam was acting. For a brief second, he wondered if a demon had possessed him. That kind of thing wasn't impossible in this timeline. But he didn't remember any demons targeting Sam at this point. They split up and searched the town block by block. Dean questioned store owners and bartenders while Henry checked whatever cameras he could tap into from nearby shops. Hours passed, and the sky shifted from pale orange to deep blue. Every lead ended in nothing. Not a single trace of Sam. Dean stood near the edge of the main street, scanning passing faces like he could force his brother to appear through sheer will. "Where are you, Sammy?" he muttered, tension heavy in his voice. A scream cut through the evening air. It came sharp and sudden from an alley 2 buildings down. Dean reacted instantly, gun already in his hand as he ran toward the sound. They turned into the narrow alley. Dean slowed to a stop. A woman lay on the ground near a dumpster, her body twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood pooled beneath her, dark and spreading across the cracked concrete. A few feet away stood a man. He held a knife loosely in one hand. Blood dripped from the blade, tapping steadily onto the pavement. "Sam," Dean said, the name leaving him in a strained whisper. The figure froze. Then slowly, deliberately, Sam turned around. His shirt was stained. His hands were red. His face wasn't panicked or confused. It was blank. Dean's grip tightened on the gun, but he didn't raise it. "Sam," Dean said again, louder this time, as if he could force his voice through whatever was clouding his brother's mind. For a moment, Sam just stood there. Then something in his face shifted. His eyes flickered with awareness, like someone waking abruptly from a deep sleep. His gaze dropped slowly to the knife in his hand. He stared at it, then at the blood coating his fingers, then at the woman lying motionless on the concrete. His breathing changed. He looked back at Dean, confusion replacing the earlier emptiness. "Dean." Sam's voice was tight, uncertain. "Did I do this?" The knife slipped from his hand and hit the ground with a metallic clatter. He stepped back slightly, staring at his own hands as if they belonged to someone else. "I don't remember," Sam said, shaking his head faintly. "I don't remember any of this." Dean stared at him, and his father's last words rose in his mind with painful clarity. "If Sam ever becomes evil, and you can't save him, you kill him." The memory sat heavy in his chest as he looked at the blood on Sam's hands, the body at his feet, and the confusion in his brother's eyes. His grip on the gun tightened just slightly, not lifting it, not lowering it. For the first time, that order didn't feel like a distant warning. It felt close. *. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon fire. Hand pointing right, patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket, get early access to future chapters currently updated up to chapter 25. Chapter 15, Chapter 15, Exorcism. Dean's fingers tightened around the grip for a moment longer, then he forced himself to breathe and lowered the gun to his side. "Sam," Dean said, voice firm but not raised. "Look at me." Sam did, his expression still shaken. "Do you remember coming here?" Dean asked. "Do you remember picking up that knife?" Sam swallowed. "No, I don't. I swear, Dean, I don't remember any of this." "All right," Dean said slowly, thinking through it. "Last thing you remember?" "The motel," Sam replied. "Going to sleep?" Dean nodded once, processing. Sirens wailed louder in the distance, bouncing off the brick walls. Dean glanced briefly toward the sound, then back at Sam. "Okay," he said, practical and focused now. "We're not figuring this out in an alley next to a dead body. So we're gonna move. You stick with me. No wandering off." *. Later in the motel room, Sam sat on the edge of the bed, leaning forward with his hands pressed to his head. He hadn't said much since the alley. Dean stood near the table, arms crossed, watching him carefully without making it obvious. The door opened and Henry stepped in. He looked at Sam, then at Dean. Dean had already told him what happened. "Dean." "1 minute," Henry said quietly. Dean nodded once and stepped outside with him. They moved a few feet away from the motel door. "Dean," Henry said under his breath, "I think Sam is possessed." Dean's head was still spinning from what he'd seen in that alley. Possession hadn't even occurred to him yet. "If that's true," Dean muttered darkly, I'll smoke that son of a bitch myself. The motel door suddenly creaked open. Both of them turned. Sam stood in the doorway. His eyes were completely black. Well, he said calmly, stepping inside, cat's out of the bag. Dean barely had time to react before Sam grabbed him by the collar and hurled him backward into the room. Dean crashed into the small table and slammed against the wall before hitting the floor. The demon turned its attention to Henry. Henry had been ready the moment he spoke his suspicion. He pulled a flask from inside his jacket and flung holy water straight at Sam's face. A sharp hiss filled the room as smoke rose from burning skin. "Ah!" Sam screamed, staggering back a step. Henry didn't hesitate. He splashed holy water again across Sam's face and chest, forcing him deeper into the room while stepping inside himself and kicking the door shut behind him. "Dean, read the exorcism!" Henry shouted. Dean rolled onto his side, reached for the duffel bag, and pulled out the worn book. He flipped to the page and began reading the Latin exorcism aloud, his voice rising over the chaos. The demon snarled, clutching at its head as the words began to take effect. Henry lifted the flask for another splash. A ceramic vase smashed against his wrist. The flask flew from his hand and shattered against the floor. "You Winchesters are always annoying," the demon growled through Sam's mouth, black eyes gleaming. 2 was already a headache. "I don't need a third on the board." Henry took a step back instinctively. The demon was suddenly in front of him. A hand clamped around his throat and lifted him off the ground. His back hit the wall hard, and his legs kicked helplessly in the air as the grip tightened. "Let go of me, you demon son of a bitch," Henry choked out, clawing at Sam's wrist. Dean's voice grew louder, the Latin flowing faster as he continued the exorcism. The demon's head snapped toward him. With a violent motion, Sam hurled Henry across the room. Henry slammed into Dean, knocking the book from his hands as both of them hit the motel floor hard. The demon stood over them, straightening Sam's body as if adjusting a suit. "You know," it said through Sam's mouth, voice smooth and mocking, "you two are fascinating. I thought I'd have to force the issue, make you watch him kill someone else. Make you pull the trigger yourself." It tilted Sam's head slightly. "But you keep refusing to kill your brother." "Stubborn." Henry groaned, rolled onto his side, and forced himself up despite the ache in his ribs. Dean pushed himself to his knees and looked up at Sam, fury replacing shock. "You black-eyed son of a bitch," Dean snapped, reaching for the fallen book. "Get out of my brother." The demon smiled faintly. "Today," it said evenly, "either you die, or Sam does. And if you hesitate again, Dean, you'll regret that moment for the rest of your life." A knife lifted off the table behind them as if pulled by an invisible hand. It floated for half a second, then shot straight toward Sam's waiting grip. The demon caught it smoothly. Its black eyes shifted to Henry. "I wonder how Sammy would feel," it said, almost thoughtfully, "if I made him kill your cousin with his own hands. He worries about you, you know. Sometimes he even questions whether dragging you into this mess was the right thing." Henry felt his stomach drop. "Fantastic. I'm the emotional leverage. Why the hell am I the main course here?" he muttered under his breath. Sam's body moved. The knife came straight for Henry's stomach. Henry reacted on instinct. Super strength. He surged forward instead of back and caught Sam's wrist mid-thrust. The blade sliced across his palm, drawing blood, but it didn't go deeper. Using the brief window, Henry twisted hard and drove his shoulder into Sam's chest, forcing the demon off balance. He wrenched the knife free and stepped behind Sam in one smooth motion, locking both of Sam's arms in a tight hold, pinning them across his chest. Dean didn't hesitate. He grabbed the book and resumed the exorcism, voice loud and steady, the Latin cutting through the room. The demon snarled and thrashed in Henry's grip. Sam's body convulsed as the words hit, smoke beginning to rise faintly from his skin. But the demon wasn't done. With a burst of force, it jerked free, slamming its head backward into Henry's face. Stars exploded in Henry's vision before he could react. The demon spun and drove both hands into Henry's chest. Henry flew across the room and hit the wall full force. The impact cracked the cheap motel plaster, and he dropped to the floor, breath knocked out of him. Dean didn't stop. His voice grew louder, the Latin steady and sharp. Sam's head snapped back as the demon screamed through him. The black in his eyes flickered under the force of the exorcism. Henry pushed himself up, chest aching, and grabbed the fallen vial of holy water. He stepped forward and threw it directly onto Sam. The water hit. Smoke burst from Sam's body as the demon shrieked. Dean reached the final lines of the exorcism, his voice cutting through the room. Black smoke poured from Sam's mouth, twisting upward before vanishing. Sam's body went limp and collapsed to the floor. Dean rushed forward immediately, dropping to his knees beside him and checking his pulse with shaking fingers. Relief crossed his face when he felt a steady beat. "You okay?" Dean asked, but his eyes shifted toward Henry, who had taken the worst of it. Henry was sitting against the wall, one hand pressed to his ribs. He spat blood onto the carpet and winced when he tried to straighten. "Definitely not," Henry muttered. "I think I need a long bed rest." "Congratulations! 1 demon exorcised. Reward granted, 10 supernatural points. Lucky wheel activated. Rare lottery triggered 1% chance. Spin the wheel. Asterisk. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon fire. Hand pointing right. patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket get early access to future chapters currently updated up to Chapter 26. Chapter 16, Chapter 16, Violent Family Bonding. What a peaceful sleep, Henry thought vaguely as he lay stretched across the Impala's back seat, half awake, listening to the steady rumble of the engine in the night as they were leaving the town behind. Up front, Dean kept his eyes on the highway. "So," Dean said after a while, voice rough but controlled, "that demon bitch was Meg." "Yeah," Sam replied quietly. "She wasn't happy about the last time." Dean gave a humorless smirk. "She's not exactly the forgiving type." Silence settled inside the car. Just engine noise and the wind against the windows. Then Sam spoke again. "Dean." Dean didn't look at him. "What?" There was a small pause. "Did Dad say anything to you about me? Before he died?" The question hung there. Dean's fingers tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "No." Sam frowned. "Nothing." Dean's jaw worked for a second before he answered. "Nothing you don't already know." The silence that followed was heavier than before. "I know what he said, Dean," Sam said finally, his voice low but steady. "Meg told me. She said Dad told you to kill me if you couldn't save me." "What does that mean?" Sam pressed. "And why did you hide it from me?" "That bitch," Dean muttered under his breath. "Dean." Dean finally glanced at him, eyes hard. "You're really gonna take her word for it?" he shot back. "After everything she's done?" "I'm not taking her word for it," Sam said. "I'm asking you. Is it true Dad said that?" Dean kept his eyes on the road. "Yeah," he said. "Then why did you hide it from me?" Sam asked. "That's not small, Dean. That's not something you just don't mention." Dean exhaled sharply. "What do you want me to say, Sam?" he shot back. "You want me to tell you, hey, by the way, if things go sideways, I might have to kill you? You want that in your head every time something weird happens?" "That's my life," Sam said. "I get a say in it." Dean glanced at him. "You think I don't already carry it," he said. "Every time you get one of those psychic visions, every time something goes wrong, I have to wonder. Not because I believe it but because it's there." Sam's voice hardened. "So you watch me?" I look out for you, Dean corrected sharply. There's a difference. Sam didn't answer. I didn't tell you because I wasn't going to let that become your identity, he said. I wasn't going to let you start thinking you're some ticking time bomb. And instead you just carried it alone? Sam asked. Yeah, Dean said bluntly. That's kind of what I do. And if it's true? Sam asked after a moment. If I can't control whatever's happening to me? Dean didn't hesitate. Then we deal with it, Dean said. Together. A beat passed. You know, you kinda left me out of that speech, Henry muttered from the back seat as he slowly sat up. Dean glanced in the rearview mirror. You're still alive, aren't you? Barely, Henry replied. He flexed his hand and winced. Cuts on my palm still sting. Pretty sure I'm gonna feel that headbutt for a week. Sam turned slightly in his seat. How are you feeling? Seriously? Henry gave him a small shrug. I've had worse. I'll live. Sam's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. About earlier. Henry waved it off. If you ever lose control again, we'll just tie you up and drag you back, he said lightly. Problem solved. Dean snorted quietly. Like today, Henry added, rubbing his ribs. Except maybe next time don't throw me through a wall. That part sucked. He shifted in the back seat and looked between them. Look, everybody loses themselves at some point, he said more seriously. That's kind of the deal with being human. My point is, Henry continued, family's there to knock some sense into you and drag you back. So if you lose control, Dean and I do the beating. Fair trade. Sam huffed a faint breath through his nose. And if I screw up? Henry added. If I go off the rails? You two better return the favor. Dean glanced at him in the mirror. Oh, trust me. I would. Sam gave a small nod. Yeah. We would. Henry leaned back against the seat. Good, he muttered. Just making sure we're all on the same violent understanding. Sam's phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the screen. It's Ellen. Dean raised an eyebrow but kept driving. Sam answered. Hey. Sam? Where are you? Ellen's voice came through, sharp and direct. Dean's been looking for you. Yeah, Sam replied, glancing at Dean. They found me. There were some complications. There was a pause on the other end. Well, Ellen continued, shifting gears, then I've got something for you boys. College campus. Professor just took a nosedive out of a fourth-story window. Cops are calling it suicide. Dean's eyes flicked towards Sam. And? Sam asked. And there are rumors the building's haunted, Ellen said. Students claiming they've seen things. Cold spots. Shadows. The usual. Henry leaned forward slightly from the back seat. You want the job or not? Ellen asked. Sam didn't hesitate. Yeah, Ellen. We'll take it. He ended the call. From the back seat, Henry let out a tired breath and pressed his fingers against his temples. Great. You two can handle it, he muttered. I think I deserve a day off. This headache is killing me. Dean glanced at him in the mirror. Headache? From what? Henry stared back at him. From busting my ass for almost 12 hours staring at screens trying to find Sam. Asterisk. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon fire. Hand pointing right. patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket get early access to future chapters currently updated up to chapter 29. Chapter 17, Chapter 17, Prank. The next day, Henry decided he had earned a break. Dean and Sam were already knee-deep in whatever haunted campus Ellen had pointed them toward, and for once Henry didn't feel guilty about staying out of it. After getting thrown into walls, strangled by his possessed cousin, and nearly turned into emotional collateral damage, he figured self-care counted as strategy. So instead of following them to another dusty building with bad lighting and worse vibes, he headed downtown. He chose the most expensive hotel in the city on purpose. Polished glass doors. Marble floors. Staff that smiled too professionally. The kind of place that didn't smell like mildew and regret. Henry walked up to the reception desk, adjusting his jacket like he belonged there. "I'd like your best room," he said calmly. "And it needs a large bathtub. The kind you can disappear in." The receptionist blinked once, then shifted into practiced hospitality mode. "Of course, sir. We have a premium suite on the upper floor." "Good," Henry replied. "After the week I've had, I plan on boiling myself alive." He handed over the card he had restructured earlier and let his eyes sweep across the lobby one last time. A staff member escorted him to the top floor. The elevator doors opened into a quiet hallway lined with thick carpet and framed art. When the suite door finally shut behind him, Henry didn't bother pretending to be composed. He dropped his bag near the entrance and fell backward onto the bed. The mattress dipped and held him. "I missed this," he muttered, staring up at the ceiling. "Those motel beds don't even come close." He stretched out, feeling the softness under his back, then rolled onto his side and laughed quietly to himself. After a few minutes, he pushed himself up and walked into the bathroom. The tub was large enough to actually lie down in without folding himself in half. He turned the water hot, waited for steam to rise, then stepped in and lowered himself slowly until the heat wrapped around him. A low hum escaped his throat. "Yeah. I definitely miss this feeling." He leaned back and looked down at his body through the rippling water. Red bruises stained his chest and ribs. Stitches tugged at the skin of his palm. The last few hunts had not been gentle. Then he remembered. When the demon had been exorcised, the system had triggered a lucky gotcha draw. Henry leaned back against the edge of the tub and focused. "Let's see what comes out of that," he muttered, reaching for the interface. The wheel formed in front of him, rewards circling in a steady spin. Icons flashed past blades, charms, strange relics until the motion slowed. It skipped over broader sections and drifted toward a thinner slice of the wheel, a narrow mark stained deep red. The pointer stopped. A blood-shaped sigil glowed faintly. "Blood of the Revenant." Henry straightened slightly in the tub as the description unfolded. "Effect: accelerates the body's natural healing processes, repairing cuts, bruises, torn muscles, and even fractured bones at approximately 10 times the normal human rate." His eyes moved lower. "Side effect: your blood contains dense supernatural energy, making you highly noticeable to supernatural creatures. Any entity that consumes your blood gains a temporary increase in physical strength." He frowned faintly. Additional trait: Revenant Impact, 1% activation chance when delivering a punch with full physical force, there is a 1% chance to trigger Revenant Impact. Upon activation, a layer of ghostly energy forms around your fist at the point of contact, releasing a concentrated shockwave that significantly amplifies the strike's destructive power. "Fast healing," he murmured quietly. "But I turn into a walking signal flare." Then he noticed it. The bruises across his ribs were lightening. Not instantly. Not magically disappearing. But fading at a steady, visible pace. The swelling along his shoulder reduced. The tight pull around the stitches in his palm eased as the skin began knitting faster than it had any right to. He flexed his hand once. "Good ability," Henry muttered. He drained the tub, dried off, and dressed. He walked toward it, ready to collapse. Then his skin started to itch. At first it was faint, a prickling along his neck. Then it spread across his arms, his chest, down his back. Within seconds it became unbearable. "What the fuck?" Henry muttered, looking down. His skin had turned red in patches. Tiny raised bumps appeared along his forearms. He scratched once and immediately regretted it as the irritation doubled. He grabbed his shirt and shook it out. Fine white powder fell from the fabric onto the floor. He froze. Among his clothes, tucked between folds in his bag, was a small packet torn open. Itching powder. The relaxed expression he'd been wearing vanished. "Who the fuck put this in my bag?" he said through clenched teeth as he scratched his arm again, already furious. Asterisk. The motel room felt smaller than usual. Sam sat at the small table, surrounded by open books, and highlighted pages. He was flipping through a journal. On the bed, Dean was sprawled comfortably, shoes still on, a basket of fries drowning in gravy balanced beside him. Music played from a small radio near his shoulder. He flipped a page in a magazine while chewing loudly. "Dude," Sam said without looking up, "you mind not eating those on my bed?" Dean didn't even glance at him. "No, I don't mind." Gravy sloshed slightly as he dipped another fry. "How's the research going?" Dean asked casually. Sam closed the book with more force than necessary and turned in his chair. "You know how it's going? Slow. You know how it would go a heck of a lot faster." He gestured toward the empty space beside him. "If I had my computer." Dean smiled, satisfied, and nodded as if that proved something. The radio crackled louder. "Could you turn that down, please?" Sam asked, irritation clear now. "Yeah, absolutely," Dean replied. He leaned over and turned the volume up. Sam stared at him. "You know what? Maybe you should just go somewhere for a while." Dean shrugged. "Hey, that's a great idea. I'd love to. Unfortunately, my car is all screwed to hell." "Dean, I told you, I have nothing to do with." The motel door suddenly burst open. Henry stormed in, face bright red, hair slightly damp, shirt half-buttoned. "Tell me," he demanded, pointing at both of them, "which one of you put the itching powder in my bag?" Dean blinked. Sam stared. Henry scratched his forearm aggressively. Dean slowly lowered his fries. "Whoa, whoa. What?" Sam frowned. "Why would we put itching powder in your bag?" Asterisk. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon fire. Hand pointing right patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket get early access to future chapters currently updated up to Chapter 30. Chapter 18, Chapter 18, Trickster. Dean and Sam stared at him, both clearly confused. Henry looked furious. His face was flushed red, his arms dotted with irritated patches from constant scratching. He kept flexing his fingers like he was trying not to rip his own skin off. "Who else could put itching powder in my bag?" Henry demanded. Dean lifted a hand slightly. Maybe Sammy would pull something like that." Sam turned his head slowly. "No, I did not. Why would you think I would do that?" Dean shrugged. "You're the quiet, long game type." "I don't do itching powder," Sam said flatly. Henry dragged his nails lightly over his forearm again and winced. "This isn't funny." Dean tilted his head. "Did you try bathing?" "I did," Henry snapped. "It didn't work well." Sam exhaled and shifted the focus. "Okay, fine. Leave the powder for now. Why don't you and Dean go talk to the victim who had a close encounter?" Dean frowned slightly. "The campus one?" Sam nodded. "Yeah. Something strange is going on campus." Henry paused mid-scratch. "Close encounter? Like, probing?" "Yeah," Sam said calmly. "That also happened on campus." Henry stood there for a second, thinking despite the itching. "Okay." Sam hesitated, then added, "And do you mind giving me your computer?" Henry blinked. "What happened to yours?" Sam's jaw tightened just slightly. "Well, someone used it to watch Bustiajan beauties. They forgot where they put it." Henry slowly turned his head toward Dean. Dean smiled awkwardly, completely unapologetic. Sam looked like he couldn't stand Dean anymore, like he genuinely couldn't stand him, and muttered under his breath, "Someone take him away from me." Asterisk. Later that night, Dean and Henry pushed through the door of a crowded bar near campus. Music thumped in the background, glasses clinked, and the smell of cheap liquor hung heavy in the air. Henry rolled his shoulders. The itching had mostly faded, leaving only faint red marks along his arms. Still annoying, but manageable. "There," Dean muttered, nodding toward a corner table. Curtis sat alone with a lineup of empty shot glasses in front of him, working on another. He looked like someone trying very hard not to think. Dean and Henry slid onto the bar stools beside him. "I heard what happened," Dean said casually. Curtis didn't look at him. "No, you didn't." He tossed back the shot. "And if you're here to make fun of me, just leave." "We're not here to make fun of you," Henry said evenly. "We just want to know what happened." Curtis stared into his glass for a few seconds before answering. "I was walking back to my dorm. Near Crawford Hall," he said slowly. "It was late. No one was around. Then this light he gestured upward with his hand, came out of nowhere. A beam. And next thing I know, I'm not on the ground anymore." Dean's expression stayed neutral. "Kidnapped?" Curtis nodded stiffly. "Yet." Dean leaned forward slightly. "What did they do?" Curtis swallowed. They. He cleared his throat and finally looked at them. "They probed me." Henry blinked. "Like, probing. Curtis pointed at him emphatically. "Yet. They probed me. Again. And again. And again and again and again. And one more time." Henry slowly leaned back on his stool. Dean made a face. "Yikes." Curtis grabbed another shot and downed it like he was trying to burn the memory out of his brain. Dean and Henry exchanged a look. For once, neither of them had a joke ready. If even half of what he was saying was true, the guy hadn't just been embarrassed, he'd been humiliated. "And that's not even the worst part," Curtis muttered. Dean blinked. "How could it get any worse? Some alien made you its busy." "Empathy, Dean," Henry cut in quietly. "He's already spiraling." Curtis stared straight ahead at the bottles lined up behind the bar. "They made me slow dance," he said. Dean frowned. "Slow dance?" Curtis nodded, jaw tight. "Yet. Slow dance? With the same thing that probed me?" Henry stared at him. Curtis swallowed hard. "There was music. I don't know where it came from. I couldn't move unless it moved me. It held me there. Just, swaying." Dean rubbed a hand over his mouth, trying not to react the wrong way. "It was horrifying," Curtis continued, voice shaking slightly. "Slow dancing with an alien who just probed me." Henry let out a slow breath through his nose. "Okay," he said carefully. "That part's definitely worse." They stepped out of the bar into the cool night air. The music thudded faintly behind them before the door shut. Dean let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "Man, that was wild. You think he was telling the truth?" "Yes," Henry said without hesitation. "He wasn't making it up. He looked genuinely horrified." Dean shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. "Then what the hell is going on in this town? First a haunted building, now aliens. Feels like some weirdo's staging all of this. Probing and slow dancing." He scoffed. "That doesn't even make sense." Henry stayed quiet for a few steps. Haunted building. Alien abductions. Over-the-top humiliation. Itching powder in his bag. The pattern clicked into place. Trickster. Gabriel. Archangel with a god complex and a taste for elaborate pranks. Of course, he thought. It's him. Explosions of absurdity. Overdramatic punishments. Messing with people for fun. Targeting the Winchesters. And apparently, targeting him too. That bastard ruined my rest, Henry muttered inwardly. And turned me into a walking rash. Asterisk. Fire for advanced chapters. Join my Patreon fire. Hand pointing right patreon.com/deathnote4455. Rocket get early access to future chapters currently updated up to chapter 31. New chapter is coming soon. Write a review.